this year's symposium. I know some of you have shown remarkable stamina for last night's events. We picked up numbers since this morning. That period of personal reflection has benefited some of the delegates and now feel able to engage again with today's proceedings. So, before we go to our final panel, one quick thing. These are the feedback forms. They look a bit like this. So obviously we really want to improve what we do at the symposium. We want to improve not just the symposium, what we do all year round. So over the course of the session, or at the end of the session, if you could take a couple of minutes to fill your forms in, please, and give them in to the registration desk downstairs before you depart over lunch. So it could be a bit like this. Okay, so without further ado, on to our panel. So what we're going to do today is we'll go through all our three speakers in order, and then we'll take questions for the whole panel or members of the panel afterwards. So I'm really glad to have such a knowledgeable and broad panel to close this year's symposium. We have on the left over here Diana Beech from HEPI, which is actually just explain what HEPI is for those who don't know. I'll leave it to Diana to explain. We have Nicola Turner here, who is not Kate Howell. You will notice, because Kate, I believe, isn't well, isn't she? Right, yeah. So Nicola's come in instead from UCAS to give us very much, I suppose, that strong perspective on the great data and the knowledge that UCAS have in this area. And finally, over here we have Katherine Griffiths, again from the FE sector, to talk very much about building upon our engagement in that area, about some of the work that's going on in her own particular university campus in Oldham. So a fantastic range of presentations. So without further ado, Diana, if you could kick us off.
Thank you. Now, I'm never really comfortable about standing between your people and their lunch, so I'm going to try and keep this quite brief. Now, I'm actually lucky enough to take part in both days of this symposium, and I've actually been privy to many of the conversations that you've been having around this topic. And as a non-WP expert, I found it inspiring to see, just what kind of impact your work makes on the ground. And I'm sure those of you who were at the dinner last night would agree with me that the students' speeches were just so emotional. So I think if you can take anything away from this conference on your way home, a pat on the back and renewed inspiration and encouragement for your work that you do. I myself maybe don't do such important work, but I'm the new Director of Policy and Advocacy at HEPI. Oh, we've got a little snazzy. No, we haven't. Yes, we have. And for those of you who don't know us, HEPI is a higher education policy institute, and we are the UK's only independent think tank specialising in all higher education policy issues. As you can see from the slide behind me, we are supported by the sector, so we've got 100 universities subscribing to us, and we also have about 10 corporate partners as well who enable us to go above the bar and do events like just sort of parliamentary breakfast series, and we also have dinners in places like the Royal Society and the British Academy with vice-chancellors, politicians and leading sector bodies. We are small, there's only 4 of us, but that doesn't mean that the work that we do isn't quite big and quite impactful. We like to leave no stone unturned when it comes to looking at a variety of policy issues, and widening access and participation is no exception to this rule, and it's an issue that HEPI has been playing with for some time. But before I detail some of HEPI's initiatives in this area, I think any comprehensive attempt to answer the question of where we go now with widening access really has to begin with an acknowledgement of the political situation that we've all woken up to this morning. So we have a hung parliament. I have to say I wasn't expecting that. For the past couple of weeks we have been sort of engaging with leading social scientists, and all of them put their money down on a Conservative majority, albeit a reduced one. So the Conservatives, don't get me wrong, are the biggest party, and as we speak at 12:30, Theresa May is going to go to the Queen to ask to form a coalition government. This will likely be with the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, who have their own reasons, regardless of your political persuasions, for not wanting to see Corbyn in government. So I think we can expect this to go ahead. That doesn't mean that things are going to be boring. Let's not lull ourselves into a sense of complacency here. And just to lighten the mood a bit, because I like to be optimistic, I thought I'd just show you this cartoon, which I think sums up the speed of change that we've all had to come to terms with over the past year or so. I'll just give you a second to digest that. It's been pretty relentless since the referendum last year, to be honest, and I think from the sector's perspective, I think you're very much going to see the third universities and science minister in as many years. It's still too early to say whether Jo Johnson's going to come back to this post, or indeed if Justine Greening will remain Secretary of State for Education. And you probably saw that she only just secured her seat last night. Whatever happens though, I think we can safely assume that widening participation is going to remain firmly on the government's agenda for the next term in office. And just to put my thoughts into context for you and why I think this, since the teaching functions of universities came under the remit of the Department for Education, widening access and widening participation to higher education has very much become part and parcel of the department's commitment to social mobility. And as you can see from the slide, Justine Greening has had a personal mantra that everybody should be encouraged to achieve their full potential, irrespective of demographic, financial or geographical background. And this is something that I feel I can say with confidence, because right up until February I actually worked at the Department for Education. I was Programme Manager for setting up the Office for Students. I was expecting some booze for that, but that's great. So with the Higher Education and Research Bill now firmly passed into the law, and a firm commitment to get the OFS up and running by April next year, I think we really can expect full steam ahead when it comes to embedding universities in the higher education policy agenda. What I think will be of high importance, though, to widening participation under the coming government is the push to upskill the British workforce, and I know there were some hints of this morning, and this is something that's going to become all the more important in the context of Brexit. Yeah, I've mentioned the B word. Whether you like it or loathe it, Brexit is going to pose a challenge to the UK in terms of if there is going to be harder immigration or tougher immigration, it's going to be harder to access the skills and the talent we need to bridge and fill crucial skill gaps. And I think universities really have a major role to play here, particularly in the context of lifelong learning, and ensure that adults can continually get the skills they need to adapt to our ever-changing labour market. Now, I know institutions like the Open University have really been at the forefront of developing high-quality courses for adult learners, and I do think that other institutions may well find themselves sort of enhancing their offering to adult learners, particularly those who are already engaging in vocational training courses. And I think as the implications of Brexit become clearer for business and industry over the coming years, remember the negotiations are kicking off in just 10 days' time, universities would do well to work with employers to develop appropriate courses and access routes. And I think one thing we could be doing is tapping into their resources as well. They too have diversity and equality commitments and widening participation teams, so we just don't know what we can learn from them yet. In any case, as of today, the government's focus is going to be on creating a successful post-Brexit Britain. So universities now have a real opportunity to ensure they are part of the solution. I do realise, though, that focusing on big headline issues like Brexit is just one part of the equation. Underlying this are more immediate issues that we at HEPI see as coming to the fore over the next 5 years. And I promised earlier I'd outline some of these for you very briefly. And I should say that all the reports that I'm going to show you are available to download for free on the HEPI website, simply hepi.ac.uk. And we also have hard copies as well, so do drop me an email if you want one posting. So the first topic I'd like to address is mental health and the importance of universities enhancing their provision to students. Last year, HEPI released this report, which was actually allowing students to be registered with a GP at home and at university to ensure there's continuity of care both inside and outside term. The report also recommends increasing funding for counselling and support services and encouraging universities to adopt their own mental health plans. And we believe that simple steps like these could be seen as vital cushions of support for disadvantaged students who might be considering but being put off by a higher education career. One of the most famous reports written by HEPI, which was written by our director Nick Hillman in collaboration with Nicola Robinson, again was out last year, and it looked at the underachievement of young white men in higher education and how to start tackling it. Now this report got a lot of coverage. I'm not sure it got coverage for the right reasons sometimes, but it called for greater outreach activity and resource to be focused on the needs of disadvantaged young men. For universities, we suggested investing in providing appropriate role models earlier in life, and also increasing aspiration by engaging with the poorest communities. We also suggested something that was hinted at this morning, and that is making courses more relevant to these people. One thing I'd like to point out, and I haven't got a slide for it because it was only actually released 2 days ago and I sent my slides in before that, being efficient, is our annual survey which we run in collaboration with the HEA, the Higher Education Academy, and that's our Student Academic Experience Survey. If you go on our website you'll see it as the latest press release. And what this does, we ask questions about well-being, student experience, happiness levels. For the first year ever, what we've done is we've cut this data, not just by the usual metrics of gender, background, race, etc., but we've actually cut it by sexual orientation. And what we find across the board of all 4 constituent parts of the UK is significantly lower levels of happiness for all students branding themselves as non-straight. So I think there's definitely more work to be done in this area, and it's something I'd like to take up in the future. The final report I'd like to show you is BTEC. So I know this is like opening a can of worms for some people, but what we've done is we've suggested that higher education institutions could be doing more to help BTEC students, and showing that relaxing university access criteria is really not going to guarantee success and work on its own. We need more than that. This report was written for us by Dr. Scott Kelly, and it looks at students arriving at universities with BTECs, since these students account for much of the growth in student numbers from lower participation backgrounds, and this is true over the past decade. What this report does show is that these students do face a glass ceiling. As you can see, only 15% of has obviously unlocked access to higher education for many groups in disadvantaged ways, and this is something that must continue. But in order for this to be maintained, what we recommend is that universities with lower number of BTEC students, like some of the Russell groups, do consider developing bespoke access courses aimed at helping these students to adjust to the methods of teaching and assessment that are common in our institutions, and which they might not have come across before in their BTEC training and also at secondary school. So that's the HEPI showcase, which I think is appropriate for the context today. And I hope you can see from that why I think the future of widening access debates is not just going to be about widening access per se, but it's about the strengthening of the adjustment and adaptation that follows it. Some might say that there's no point perfecting attraction if you haven't got a hold on retention. And in the same way, I think we should look at the next 5 years or so, irrespective of the government, as a time in which we can move the lens from what we can do to get disadvantaged people into our institutions to what we can do to keep them there. And I think this is something that the government of the day is going to be looking at as well. It's not just about attraction, but retention as well. Thank you.
Able to join the conference yesterday, but I was here today and took part in the Cumbria and Met presentation, so some great sharing of practice. I'm going to focus now on a case study really from the university campus in Oldham. I'm a director of HE Development and Learning at the campus there. We're only a small campus, we're part of the Oldham College, and we've got a discrete campus building where we have about 500 students. And what my thoughts really around this are the students' journeys there, the obstacles that they've encountered along the way. We've gone through a similar journey in the last few years as well. So in terms of thinking about 2020, we're still making our way through that journey ourselves. I've got lots to tell you about, so I'm hoping that I can be succinct as well in terms of the timings. As I say, we've got about 500 students. We've got our own HE library, our own HE environment, but we do face a lot of challenges in Oldham. Only 27% of Oldham's working population have got a degree, whereas across the country we're told that is 37%. So that's a major challenge over the next 3 years for us. For those of you who might not be familiar where Oldham is, we're part of Greater Manchester, and we work closely with the universities of Manchester and the other FE colleges as part of the Greater Manchester Higher. And we work collaboratively wherever possible. I think earlier on we did acknowledge that there are also tensions. We're also competing with some of our university partners as well. So those are things to probably bring out a little bit. We're on the borders there of Thameside and Rochdale, two other quite deprived areas, and we're also on the border of West Yorkshire, Kirklees, Huddersfield, where oops, I'll just go back, where we've got some amazing countryside as well, we've got access to that. In terms of Oldham's history, one of these northern towns at its peak, one of the most productive towns regions, even is, the issues, the challenges that we are facing. Employment in Oldham isn't as high as nationally, so 64%, although it's not the lowest in Greater Manchester, we're lower than the national average. And it's not been improving, despite Greater Manchester and despite Manchester itself being very much a boom city in the northwest. And we've also got a series of issues around the economy in terms of wages, people who live in Oldham and people who work in Oldham. Those wages are depressed and again significantly below the averages across England. On top of that, we're also got a picture of educational issues and deprivation, where although young people are gaining higher levels of qualifications, we've still got a lot of the adult population not qualified, as I said earlier, to level 4. I'll just break that down a little bit more in terms of England, Greater Manchester and our mixed Asian and black communities. So those are really issues that the college is working with, but also that we're trying to work with as well. So this is our social context, and it impacts very much on the experiences that our students bring to the campus, the support that we do need to provide, and the kind of curriculum that we need to put on to address that and to support our students. One of our big decisions last year was to increase our fees. We'd kept our fees capped at 6,000 because most of our students are local, but we are now at the stage where we do need to raise those fees in order to respond to the students' needs. So our fees from September will be £7,500, and I know a lot of colleges delivering HEPI have already gone there, but we held back, but we're now at the position where we need to raise those fees to support our students. And I think as we've acknowledged, this is a political situation. I think while we have we still retain a Conservative government that will still continue austerity measures, this has affected us, it affects our students. We are living in a divided society, but we also know that education makes a massive difference. We've got a challenge here, and we're hoping that through our courses and through the environment that we can provide, that this can make a difference, that we can invest in our students in that capacity. And every pound spent in education, a wider community. At the same time, we've been going through our own journey with our partners. We've initially we were with the University of Huddersfield, but in 2012 they withdrew from that arrangement. We had 1,300 students at that point in time, so we know that out of the community of Oldham, people want to do degrees, they want to enter higher education. That did knock us back. There was a period then of some instability, so we made arrangements with the University of Teesside. So you can imagine as a small HE setup, we're working with our partners. We have to present that we can run higher education courses. We've got to be validated, and while at the same time keep teaching our courses. So we've gone through quite a lot since that intention to get 50% of our people into higher education. We've gone through our own changes. So in 2015, University of Teesside were working with us. We enrolled students to their courses, and in 2015, Teesside University withdrew their partnership, and that was a strategic decision of the university. But I think this is again one of those tensions of delivering HE and FE in a local setting, where we know our students are not necessarily going to travel, leave their communities to go to Manchester Met or to Central Manchester. So we're dependent very much on our university partners. We're now in a more stable position. We have got relationships now with UCAS and Sheffield Hallam. So we're back on track. So that journey has been interrupted, but we're now back on track to deliver the sorts of courses that we want to be able to provide. So this does give us a lot of opportunities to work with our students, relevant courses as well for the Greater Manchester area. We do know that there's a lot of work within the health sector. Devolution Manchester has also given us opportunities to work with our NHS partners, so we're developing some pilot programmes with them. We want to develop that curriculum that supports widening participation. The way that we design our courses, we want that to reflect the needs of our students. We still have contact hours of 15 hours a week for our first years, and that's contact time. That's people coming into lectures, coming into sessions, into the diverse teaching settings. We do want to focus on employability, but I would say not exclusively. We do also want to talk about heritage, history, the arts, culture, and not be limited by the traditional business courses, the traditional finance, professional services. We want that other element that higher education gives our students. And we want to build in student support needs into our curriculum. Similar to a lot of colleges and HE institutions, we're now embedding a lot more academic skills into our curriculum. And we're returning to that, not just at the beginning of induction, but we're following that through so that we're not assuming students just take that information, but they do need that to be repeated. It's an iterative process for them. And we want to be able to reward that and celebrate it. It is hard work working in widening participation, working in education. We're now in our second year of running a research symposium.
2 minutes, Katherine.
For students and for staff, and to create that space that is all about belonging, that conviviality, where we know each other, we know each other's work, and that we can celebrate that. We're also supporting that. I'll just do this for the final slide. We're unique in having 2 academic skills lecturers who are dedicated to working with HE students. We were successful in achieving some HEPI catalyst funding, so we've now got an actual space for our students to go and do their group work, to book into that. A careers officer, HE disability advisor, and using our additional funding, we're going to be bringing in some pastoral and mental health support. And I do want to speak to our colleague from Cumbria who's got these transition advisors as well, because I think there's lots of good practice going on there. To work alongside our academic staff who do inevitably get drawn into a lot of that pastoral work. The majority of our students are non-traditional, so 67% of our students are over 24, 25. Our younger students, we're hoping to recruit more in that age group as we develop more courses. I think that kind of sums up where we're going. 2020 does seem a long way off, but I'm sure with that tenacious approach of our staff, the commitment, then we will keep improving on our
Thank you for that fascinating insight into your work in Oldham. I particularly support your desire to enable your students to study a wide range of courses, not just those in business and other areas. I think they're very important courses, but we shouldn't have an assumption that just because such young people come from such areas as Oldham, that's all they can study. And I think it's really important that the courses that the majority of the students take for granted are available to them, the arts and the creative areas are available to all students. So I particularly admire and support that as well.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's my first time speaking at a NEON conference, so it's nice to be here, and it's lovely to have actually seen so many really interesting presentations from people, and seeing what you guys are doing and seeing how we can support that, and indeed what we are doing to support that. So this is going to be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour really through what we're doing at the moment with 2020 in mind. So obviously I'll give you my contact details at the end if you do have any questions as I'm whizzing through all the information. I'd made the vast mistake of asking my colleagues if there was anything in particular they wanted me to mention, and they did. They wanted me to mention a lot. So I'm going to skip through most of this.
Let's hope you can say it quickly then.
Yeah, say it really, really quickly. I really want to get to the part really that I've been working on, because that's the bit I know about. So there is a lot of data that we've been talking about over the last couple of days, and you're probably a little bit bored of that by now, so I'm hoping so anyway. I really want to talk about our admission services and the new application management system that we're working on at the moment. I want to talk a little bit about how we contextualise admissions. I know that's really important for people, and the information and advice that we know is so important for young people. So most of you will have come across our end of cycle reports. We publish those every year, and we saw some interesting things this year. So what we saw is there are over 700,000 applications this year. That's more than it's ever been before. And since 2006, we've seen that disadvantaged young people are 70% more likely now to enter higher education than ever before. We've also seen massive improvements. 200 constituencies in 2006 had a rate of higher education. Last year, we found that was now only 20 constituencies, so that's a massive improvement. And we've also seen improvements with the black ethnic group as well, now 80% more likely to enter higher education and higher than average. So we have made some real improvements. But we can't be complacent, because what we also introduced last year was the multiple equality measure. Now, I don't know if any of you have had a chance really to go and play around with the data on the website, but it's really interesting to see what you can pick out from there. We've been talking an awful lot about having one measure not really being good enough in order to understand what equality is and understanding the disadvantage and entry rates. So we've brought together sex, ethnic group, FSM status, the Polar 3, which we know is not entirely reliable on its own, but when it's fitting with other different dimensions, then actually we can start to see a more fuller picture of entry rates to higher education, and also school type as well there. It's really useful to really dig down, but what we've noticed from this is whilst we're making lots and lots of advances, we're actually seeing a slowing of the progression rates. So I'll just let you have a little look at that graph there. Basically what we saw this year is really, although those rates are still high, they're actually slowing. So what we're seeing here is the ratio of people. The group 1 is the most disadvantaged, and group 5 are the most advantaged. So if you want me to go through that in a little bit more detail at some point, I'm happy to do so. It's probably something you'd want to have a little look on our website for. 15th of January application data is the most up-to-date we have, and it's really useful to understand early application behaviour. What we've seen, as you've probably been aware, is a decline of about 5% in applications this year at this particular stage. We've got a falling 18-year-old population. We've got a slight drop in the number of people from the EU. I've no idea why that might be. Nursing students are down a little bit, but the biggest drop has been from mature applicants. And I know a number of people here today have mentioned that is a great concern. So what we need to consider, or what are the implications of this going forward to 2020? I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk about our strobe tool. I don't know, again, if that's something that anyone has had an opportunity to look at, but it's a really interesting one for people who are doing outreach activities or activities to encourage people to university. For many people, that able to look and see if they've come to their own institution, but not necessarily able to understand the impact on young people who've gone elsewhere. And this tool will actually help you to do that, so you can understand the much wider implications of what your work is doing. So it allows you to track groups or individuals anonymously through their applications, so you can get to see where they're applying, where they're receiving offers, and where they're being accepted. So you can really start to see the value of your work. And again, just very quickly looking at that. The thing I really want to talk about though is this. This is our new application management system. And we're really starting to take advantage of the fact that we've got new technology, which is quite exciting. So we've not had the opportunity before to actually really look at different groups of learners and understand how we can really support them through their application. And we've now got a really good opportunity to do that as we move through our digital acceleration phase and move on to our new application platforms. We're arranging a whole new bunch of questions, basically, that allow students to declare whether they're estranged. I'm sure if you were in Becca Bland's session yesterday, you'll understand how important that is. We're looking for students with caring responsibilities, those with parental responsibilities, refugees, asylum seekers, and also a more inclusive gender question. But those top 4 questions are ones that I'm working on myself at the moment. I'm working very much in league with support staff at universities, with admissions staff at universities, and very much the sector organisations that you can see here on your right as well. Because we acknowledge we're not the experts. Goodness knows I knew nothing about estranged students before I started to work with Becca and Susan and everyone at Standalone who taught me so much. And what we've understood is that you guys are having to do an awful lot of work to try and understand who these students are and put them in touch with all the great support that is available at many universities. What we thought we could do is actually help you to make the match between the support and where the disadvantage is. We were talking yesterday about retention and the fact that disadvantage follows students through university. It doesn't stop when you get there, it carries on through. So that support at university is absolutely critical. And when we saw her and the success she's made of her time at university now studying her masters, it's really important that we're able to raise that. So if you want to know any more about that, I am actually your person to ask about it. We're certainly not only just looking at getting the experts, we're making sure that the right people are looking at the questions, getting the help text right, and we're asking students themselves to check that we're getting that right as well, because it's so important that people understand what those questions are asking and how that data is going to be used as well. And to link into that, we're improving the information and advice on our website. So we have quite a wealth of stuff on there at the moment already, which is designed to help people make really good decisions and to help advisors understand where to direct people for really good information. Really important for those who do not have the benefit of good quality IAG. And to support those questions, we're increasing our information and advice, and we've also introduced a new widening participation webpage, and I urge you to go and have a look at this as well. We've got lots of reports on there. We've also got lots of resources and toolkits, which is something that we're actually working on increasing at the moment. We've got toolkits to help with mature students, to help with care leavers, part-time students, and those with a variety of individual needs. And we have a disability toolkit that I've been working on, which should be coming soon. But we need to make sure that's really, really just right. There's a lot of information, and we want that as accessible as possible. And we're working with a whole number of sector organisations to get that right too. So we want those toolkits to be not only useful for students who need some information, but for advisors and teachers who do not necessarily know how to advise their students about situations that are quite tricky or really understand what support is available. So that's an area that we think we'd like to develop even more. So again, do have a little look at that and give us your feedback on how that's working for you. And then just briefly then, looking at contextualised admissions. I know this is something we've mentioned several times over the last couple of days. We've got a contextualised admissions flyer on our website, which is available to be downloaded. And again, it may be something that you're very familiar with, but teachers and advisors, again, may not be quite so familiar with it. So that information is for them, particularly. just to help support those students understand what contextualised admissions are, how contextualised data is used, and how they can make the very most of that. So we've been working at Teachers and Advisors conferences and through our regular communications with teachers and advisors to raise the profile of this too. As well as working with SPA, who obviously are based within UCAS as well, and working very closely to get that information out to them. Okay, if you have any questions at all, then please just let me know. And again, I appreciate that was very, very quick, so thank you.
Thank you.